Hello and welcome to Addicted to Lacrosse. This is Season 3, Episode 3. Today is Sunday, January 17th, 2016. My name is Graham Perro. With me, as always, not as always, for the first time this year, we have the usual panel of Tyler Fitch and Melissa Daphne. A whole bunch of games to talk about this weekend. The only other news that I want to just touch on is the retirement of Jeff Snyder. He hadn't played this year. He was cut by Calgary a couple months ago, I think. And I don't know if he had kind of decided to retire at that point or if he was going to wait to see if he got offers from other teams. But I had also heard that he was only interested in playing in Calgary anyway, seeing as he's a Calgary guy. But the announcement came this week that he has officially retired. And ironically enough, the Roughnecks then signed his brother Bob, so that was kind of odd. Tyler, you mentioned something about Snyder a couple of weeks ago. I wanted to see what your thoughts were.
Yeah, the NL all-time top 30 list came out, and I realized Jeff Snyder was missing. In my mind, I had overcredited his accomplishments. Like when his retirement came out, I checked the stats. I thought he was on the Calgary team in '09 that won a title, so I was like, great face-off man, won a title, all these things. But apparently he only joined them in 2011, so he hadn't won a title, and I guess that would slightly skew the top 30 rankings, but still there's plenty of players on there who haven't won a title either, so it doesn't matter. He, for a good number of years, revolutionized face-offs, or defined what a face-off man looked like in the NLL and outdoor. He went into the World Championships in '06 in London, Ontario, and was the tournament MVP, I want to believe. I think Jeff Zwicky was not MVP, just offensive player, but I think Jeff Snyder was MVP because he went in, won all the face-offs, which gave Canada possessions to win the World Championship for the first time in 30 years, like something like that, 28 years. And he just rolled on for the next decade, close to it, basically defining what a great face-off guy looked like. And it's a bummer that I think the league changed a little bit this year with the one step with this ball in the back of your stick, which maybe didn't fit his style anymore. But he had a great run, and he's my favorite face-off guy ever. Even though I never played for the Stealth, I do face-offs when I play lacrosse, so I was like, I want to do everything like he does, even though it wasn't even close. But still, I just really appreciated what he did on the floor, and it'll be sad to not see him play anymore.
Yeah,
Melissa,
he
you
was
gonna
one of those.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
sorry, Graham. He was definitely one of those players you kind of loved to hate, and you mostly hated him because he wasn't on your team. I mean, I know recently there's been a lot more discussion about who's the better face-off guy, Jeff or Bob, but while they were both great face-off guys, Jeff was just so dangerous because he could just take it down and score. I'd really be curious to see what the stats were on that. How many goals did he score straight off the face-off? Just him. And that's where it made him so dangerous to play against because he could turn, a big lead all of a sudden into nothing because he'd get just a couple goals right off the face-off, or he could all of a sudden take the lead or, send it into overtime. So you never knew what was going to happen with him. And of course, he was a gritty player, so it was always exciting to watch him. But yeah, he was just a great player. And it's a shame if he was cut and he retired because of the rule changes, which I don't, as a fan, I don't feel I have made much of a difference. But he was a great player. I'm gonna really miss watching him play. He always made it exciting. So
He had at least 2 bouts in the last 2 seasons where he had injuries, so he may not have been 100%. Something along those lines could be a contributing factor as well.
yeah, he's not exactly a spring chicken anymore, is he?
No.
So
I think he said in his sort of retirement press conference that eventually the body just kind of not so much gives out, but is not able to perform to the level that it needs to stay competitive in the league, and he decided that he had reached that level and can't compete anymore. And so, yeah, it's unfortunate. I guess it happens to everybody. It happened to even John Tavares, but most obviously don't last as long as him. But yeah, it's. I do remember watching a game in Buffalo, Philadelphia Buffalo. I think it was a playoff game a few years ago, and I think I talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago. How the Bandits just said, you know what, it's Snyder. We're not going to win faceoffs anyway. So they literally didn't even send anybody to the faceoff circle when a faceoff happened. They just said, we'll get our defense set up, give Snyder the ball, and go. And he won every single faceoff in that game.
But
And
Buffalo won the
they might, I don't even remember who won the game, but
quite certain. This I remember it was like he's 29 for 31 on faceoffs or something, and it didn't matter. They didn't win.
yeah. Yeah, I
He's
think we've talked
also
about that before as well, that
yeah. He's
winning that many
also
faceoffs don't really win you the game. But just his dominance was a treat to watch. Sorry, Tyler, you were going to say something.
yeah. There's also, I was remembering back to it, when he started out, he's also a marquee fighter when the league didn't really care so much about that. And he kind of, as much as he revolutionized faceoffs, he revolutionized fighting too, because his style was like he had a deliberate style. He would grab the guy and just these short jabs from their collar, just right here. He had his head turned the whole time, and he would just like the guys would be punching the back of his head instead of his face. And he had some major tilts that were highly viewed on YouTube, and the fans in Philly loved. Even the fans in Calgary, they loved that. And then the league kind of moved away from that. He adapted. He stopped fighting so much. But it's another thing where he defined how it was done at the time. Very great career he put forward.
And I remember another time, it might even have been the same game in Buffalo, where um, he was involved in some sort of play that was happening, and the other player basically went after him, dropped the gloves, and basically tried to attack him, and Snyder just had nothing to do with it and walked away. And the other player got 2 minutes for roughing or instigation or something. Snyder got nothing, and they went on the power play. So it just seemed like he understood that that's one of his roles was to do the fighting. But in this particular situation, it would help if I didn't, and he didn't, and it was a smart play, and gave his team an advantage, and that's what you want to do as a player.
Yeah, a lot of people definitely kind of would describe him as a thug or kind of just a goon, but he really was very smart and strategic about when he would start a fight and when he would walk away. And I think a lot of that was overlooked because, like Tyler said, he had some great fights and he kind of developed a reputation for fighting. But he did seem very smart about when he would or wouldn't do it.
Okay, so congratulations to Mr. Snyder on a great career, and we will move on to the games of the week. I saw one of them live in Toronto on Thursday night, which was an odd thing for the NLL, but I seem to remember somebody saying there's another Thursday night game this year, this season. I have to look at that,
February
but
11th, Mammoth have one.
do they? Okay. So I think this was my first Thursday night game, and the announced attendance was 9,300 and change. I didn't think there were that many people there. It looked like for the last few years, a standard rock game was lower bowl is mostly full, and then there's a scattered group of people in the upper bowl, and that's 10, maybe 11,000 if the upper bowl is a little more full. This didn't look like that. The upper bowl had a few handful of people here and there. The lower bowl was much emptier than I'm used to seeing, so I would have said maybe 8,000, maybe 9 tops. So 9.5 seems high, but it could have been people bought tickets and then didn't go. So I don't know if attendance is actual people in the stadium or tickets that were purchased. But in any case, yeah, that was not a good game for the Rock. I can basically talk about the two Rochester games because they were kind of the same. Rochester scored 12 goals. Toronto didn't score anywhere near that many. I didn't see the game on Saturday. Just looking at the box score and things, it was just kind of the same thing. The defense was okay. This is back to Thursday again. The defense was okay. They held Rochester to 12, which is giving you a chance to win. Of course, scoring 12 on Rochester is a different thing. But the offense just wasn't there. They they looked like they needed Josh Sanderson. They needed somebody out there to take control and be the quarterback and be the feeder for everybody and get things set up, and nobody did that. I don't know if they were looking for Colin Doyle to do that because he's kind of the veteran, but he didn't. There were a few times where I hate to say it, he looked old. Somebody would feed him the ball right in the middle, and he'd just miss the net. A couple times he'd grab it and just wasn't able to shoot, or was able to shoot and just hit Vince square in the middle of the chest, and it just looked really messy. The offense just didn't look the way we've seen it for the last couple of years. It did look odd near the end of the game. Now, they were probably getting kind of desperate because they needed some goals, and it looked like Doyle kind of wanted to take over and say, I'm going to be that guy that gets us a couple of goals and gets us right back in this and brings up everybody's confidence level and all that sort of thing. Except Hellier wanted to do that too, and so did Hickey, and so they ended up taking low percentage shots, and I guess it's probably typical for when you're in sort of desperation mode near the end of a game that you're losing, but it certainly didn't help. And judging by the score in Saturday's game, it looked like more of the same. I was actually out for dinner with friends, and just before I left the restaurant, I checked the score, and it was 2-0 Rock, and then a few minutes later, I checked again, and it was 4-2 Rochester. I said, okay, well, we're in this. It's not so bad. And then I went home, and by the time I got home, it was like 11-5 or something. So I guess I'm kind of glad I didn't see that. Did you guys see either of these two games?
Go ahead, Melissa.
Yeah, I have unfortunately nothing to add. But going to your attendance point, Graham, I know there's been a lot of discussion over the years over whether it's turnstile or tickets sold, and some accusations that some teams are able to inflate their poor attendance or dwindling attendance because they give a lot of tickets away, and so the count is higher. And some of that's even been lobbed at the Mammoth. And I know the last few games, when you look at the stands, they look pretty empty to me, and they're still saying a pretty high number. So, and I know the Mammoth, depending on who you would ask in the organization, would say it was turnstile or tickets sold. So it could have been a case of tickets sold, not turnstile, which I think is kind of typical, is that it's tickets sold, since they get the money regardless.
Yeah, I watched both these games, and I was surprised by the Rock's performance. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I picked them to win the East, and right now they're 0-3. And it's not just Doyle necessarily, but they all kind of look old. Their defense is some very established guys, but being established means that they're older, and they were just getting torn apart by Rochester 2 times. Not a good situation to be in. That was my main observation, is along the lines of, wasn't just Doyle that was old, and they have time to change things up, but they need to find a quarterback again, just like you said, Graham. There's nobody controlling that offense. They're just trying to do stuff. Hellier scored kind of when he wanted. He had some great shots. Hickey's not producing like he did last year, which I don't think it was a fluke year. I just think maybe teams have had a year to adjust to his style, which is definitely something they all do over time. You don't see people continually pop out of nowhere and then continue to dominate when they have time to learn your tendencies for the whole off season. What do we got next?
Next game I was going to look at was Calgary, New England. Now, I didn't see this one, so I don't have much to say about it. Checking out the scorecard here, Calgary won 9-8, in case people are unaware of the result. Looks like it was back and forth all the first half, each team taking the odd 1-goal lead and then giving it up again. And then Calgary scored 5 straight and took a 9-4 lead, and then New England scored 4 straight to bring it back to 9-8, but that was it. The last goal New England scored was at 14:59 of the fourth quarter. So it was only a 1-goal game for the last second, so it probably looks a little closer than it was. Yeah, I don't have anything else to add to that. Um, Tyler, did you manage to see this one?
No, it was parenting stuff for me, so I didn't watch this one, so I could watch the stealth game that was starting about an hour after that. So I missed out here, but I was very interested to see how Sean Evans would do against his old team, and it seems like his old team answered the call. It's not just one guy versus everybody, but he's a pretty impressive one guy. And it was, even though they lost, I think it was probably a good game for the crowd in New England to attend, and uh, if they're paying attention to what the other things that the Black Wolves are doing with their wins on the road and a 1 point loss at home, hopefully they're energizing those fans to be optimistic about how the season's going to go.
Melissa, did you manage to see this one?
Unfortunately, I didn't. I had a little issues this weekend finding where some of the games actually were. But I am surprised to see Calgary went scoreless in the fourth, and they did go 3 for 6 on the power play. So, like you said, it looks like it was a closer game maybe than it was. But it kind of makes me wonder if Calgary just took their foot off the gas in the fourth, or if New England really just came alive and Calgary just couldn't keep up. It actually makes me kind of curious to try and find this one and actually watch it and see what happened. At least watch the second half.
Yeah, back-to-back weeks with Calgary traveling to the East Coast. Could get tired, but I mean, they just need another 20 minutes of real time, 15 minutes of clock time to perform. I don't think they'd just drop off that appreciably that quickly. I think the Black Wolves defense said, hey, let's give our offense a chance by stopping Calgary. Started doing that.
Yeah, you mentioned an interesting point. The Roughnecks managed to keep Sean Evans to a single goal and no assists. Um, and I did see a tweet from somebody saying the last time Evans was kept to a single point in a game was however many years ago, and I didn't catch when it was. Um, but anytime anybody can keep Sean Evans to a single point, you're doing okay. I imagine the Roughnecks know the way he plays better than anybody because he was there for 4 years. Um, but you'd figure somebody who is as good as Sean Evans is able to make adjustments and say, okay, this is what I might normally do. I'm going to change things up a little bit, but that's got to be tough to do as well if you've got a style. He's been in the league for probably close to 10 years now, if not more. Um, and when you've got a particular style that's getting you 130 points in a season, you don't want to mess with that. But at the same time, Pat Saunders had a couple of goals. Kevin Buchanan had a couple of goals. Sheldon Burns had a couple of goals. So maybe he's, seeing his teammates doing reasonably well, and so if he's only picking up 1 point in this game, that's not so bad. If he starts doing that in 4 or 5 games, then maybe there's an issue. But until there's an actual problem, don't worry about it. Okay, next game we were going to talk about is Vancouver, Saskatchewan. I did see part of this one, but actually I didn't see much of this one. I heard some of it because the broadcast feed was terrible, and just seemed like true for a lot of people. I found it unwatchable. I couldn't even watch it. I actually turned the video off and was doing other things with the sound on, and the sound was really choppy as well. So that hopefully they can clean that up for the next game. This is the first game in Saskatchewan. 9,000 plus attended it, so that's pretty good. I looked over the numbers for the Edmonton attendance. They averaged about 6,500 last year. The max was only 7,600. They did get 10,000 plus for the championship final, so that was great. But other than that, they've only had one game since 2010 that was higher than the 91-47 that showed up in Saskatoon. So one game in Saskatoon. We'll see how the next one goes. Something we want to get to later is the second game in Georgia that happened today, where their attendance dropped off quite a bit from the first game. So that's kind of disappointing. But it was also a Saturday afternoon game during the NFL playoffs, so that may have had something to do with it as well. Anyway, onto the game itself. Tyler, I imagine you have more insight into this one than I do, so why don't you start?
Yeah, the Stealth corrected their issues from the week before. A couple things going on there. First up, Lineup changes. Matt Beer's coming off his suspension. I think he's very key cog to the whole defensive scheme. So when he was out against New England, that really wrecked their defensive experience. Secondly, they brought up the young kid Jordan Durston, rookie. He gets 2 goals. First one was a great little highlight, coming off battle for the ball and then dove across the crease, put it over Bold's shoulder. It was good action there. Corey Small returned to his Man Cup form, and that was nice to see. 6 goals. No, sorry, 5. 5 goals in the victory here. Late in the game, the announcers mentioned, "Oh yeah, he's a former Rush player. He might be sticking it to the Rush." I don't know. I think he's just a great player who had a terrible week last week, and it wasn't so much about the Rush, so much as him just playing his game. Most amazing stat I found for the whole game is, as we're talking about the Rock game and Josh Sanderson quarterback in the offense, Garrett Billings, who had figures coming into quarterback the Stealth offense, had all of 1 assist for the whole game. So 1 assist on 13 goals for the Stealth, and the Stealth still got the win. That means they're finding ways to score against a tough Rush defense where the offense wasn't predicated on moving the ball around through Billings. It was get the goals you can get, and they did a great job of that. A few transition goals from like Travis Cornwall. Let me see. I guess he's the only official transition person. But they had some good action running the ball, and I was just very happy with the results. I was totally freaking out after one game, but during the week I saw a thing come up on my app, phone on my app called Time Hop, which shows you this day in history on all your social media sites. And it reminded me in 2011, Stealth had just a terrible game early in the season, and that was the year they went to the Championship Cup. So nothing to worry about. Just one game that they blew at home terribly. But to go into Saskatoon when the Rush were raising the banner, feeling really good about being the champions and celebrating that, and hand them a loss. That's very, very good omen for the potential of the Stealth. I fear they may not always execute perfectly at that potential, but we've seen that they can beat the best, so please continue to go do that, Stealth players. Melissa, you got any thoughts on the game?
Oh, it's kind of good to hear after some of the struggling that Vancouver's done the past couple seasons that maybe they have made some changes and we'll see just a different Stealth. Unfortunately, as I said, I had problems finding some of the games this week, so I didn't really get to watch too many. So I didn't get to see this one.
Okay, one more game. Sorry, 2 more games to talk about. I guess, Melissa, we'll go right back to you on this one. Buffalo and Colorado. This was a really exciting one. I only saw the second half, so I don't know too much about what happened in the first half. But some pretty big numbers in there. But I guess when you end up with a 15-14 score, there's going to be some big numbers. What did you think, Melissa?
It was good to watch these teams play. Buffalo definitely set a tone, I think, early on, and that probably was their goal coming in, because it was definitely different in the second half than the first. They were a lot more penalties and things like that. Just kind of what you'd expect, especially as at least a couple of the players were on the Buffalo team that the Mammoth did be in Buffalo for the Cup. But one thing, total side note, that I had to find kind of interesting that we were discussing is they kept talking about how John Tavares was on the bench. And I honestly cannot remember if I've ever seen him play in Denver, or if, it's been so long I just can't remember it. Because every time Buffalo came here, he actually wasn't playing. So it was kind of interesting that he was here in Denver finally on the bench. So, like I said, total side note. Overall, I liked the first half play from the Mammoth, but I was frustrated again with the second half play. They were looking a lot more flat. There was a lot more dropped passes, especially at key moments in the game when they really needed to get their junk together, and they kept dropping the ball. And they were looking really flat in front of the crease. So it really became a matter of it was Buffalo's game, and they just had to hang on to it, and they just weren't able to. Some of that, I think, was some fluke plays. There was a one goal, almost goal, I should say, that the ball just rolled literally down the crease line, hit the corner, and bounced right over Ward's leg. And it's like, just an inch of difference, and it would have rolled across the crease, or it would have hit Ward and hit into the net. And so little things like that, just few bounces just didn't go Buffalo's way. But it was definitely their game to lose. Cupido definitely had just a great spinning goal on a shorthander even, and he tied it up, and that was the big difference. It really was looking like Buffalo was going to take it, and he just happened to get it on that shorthander, and they scored in overtime. We've definitely seen some good play from some of the newer Mammoth players. I think Caleb Crawford was probably one of the biggest impacts. He had a whole lot of assists.
9 assists, including the overtime winner.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I mean, Adam Jones had a sock trick, so I mean, there was definitely some very good building blocks that I hope that they're able to continue on. And it seems like either the team is the newer guys are starting to get used to how John Grant Jr. passes, because it's great that he can fake out the defense and the goalie with his wacky, you never know where it's going to come from, shots on net. The problem is he passes to his teammates the same way. And so half the time he does this weird no-look pass, and they're not looking anywhere near him because it's such a random no-look pass. And so hopefully they're starting to kind of get a feel and gel a little bit. So it was good to see a little bit less of those issues than we did in the first game. So I think this is probably one of the first games that maybe giving me a little hope. But one thing Graham and I were actually talking about before we started recording is once upon a time being in the Mile High City was actually giving the Mammoth a huge benefit, because we actually had a lot of the players living here. We had Carlson and Sims and Langtree and Glant and a handful of others that were living here, and so they had adapted to that Mile High difference. But now so many of the players for both teams are traveling in that we've lost that advantage, and you're starting to see the impact on them. So it would be nice if we'd get some more Colorado players actually living here so we could get that advantage back. Do you see this one, Tyler?
Yes, I was able to watch most of it. I think I had, at one point, sports overload, NFL game, phone had one game, tablet had the other NLL game, so I was watching everything I could. Another high-performing or high-scoring Mammoth game. I think they're 16 goals, and 15 goals in their 3 games, which is almost as many as the Stell scored in their, averaging about almost what the Stell scored in their 2 games combined. I did not pick Colorado to go 3-0 to start the season at all. 2 overtime wins means they're not just lights out on defense and holding people down, but nobody's stopping that offense. So if they can tweak some things on D and start locking people down, they might have games where it's not even close, and they'll be more like that Rochester game than the 2 home games they've had. This weekend, I'm really excited to see how the Stealth do against them. If we get this last weekend or this current weekend's version of the Stealth instead of the opening weekend version of the Stealth, it'll be a great game. Otherwise, the Mammoth will score 25 on the Stealth if they come out like the first week. It would just be horrible. So I'm really excited to see what happens there. And I'm very impressed by the overall Mammoth play. I think picking up Calum Crawford is looking genius. Ilya Geish, usually when the Mammoth pick up a Stealth player who didn't make the roster, it has not been terribly helpful to them, but he's out there contributing and looking sharp. So early front runner in the West, and if they keep playing like they're doing, they're going to be a big threat to everybody across the league, because I mean they're the best team out there right now just on scoring in general. What are your thoughts here, Graham?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on a couple things that Melissa said. First of all, I agree about John Grant, that one of his advantages is that he can shoot from anywhere. He can adjust his stick to shoot sidearm, left, right, either way, and the goalie never knows what he's going to do. But like you said, he passes the same way. And actually, Steven Stamp said something like this in his IL Indoor column this weekend, that he'll pass behind his head to the point where not only do the defensive players not know that he's doing this, but the offensive players don't even know that they're open, whereas he does. So he knows, oh, that guy's open now. He's got a clear shot to the net. And before the guy who's open really realizes that he is open, the ball's in his stick. And if the ball's in his stick and he realizes it and he shoots, then great. If he doesn't realize the ball's coming to him, then it could go over his shoulder, and then the play is kind of messed up. So if everybody's on the same page and knows what Grant's going to do, then that can be really dangerous. If they're slightly off a little bit, then there could be passes to nobody, and that's not good. But if they're firing on all cylinders, which they certainly have been the first 3 games, then that's a pretty dangerous offense. I want to look at the numbers. Mammoth have scored 47 goals in their 3 games, which is 9 more than anybody else in the league. Now, not all the teams have played. That's probably close. Not all the teams have played 3 games, and the Mammoth have, so it's hard to compare. But at the same time, they've also given up 43 goals, which is more than anybody else by 7. And when you've given up more goals than the Rock, and the Rock are playing like the Rock are playing, then that's not so good. The Rock have only scored 19 goals, which is rather scary. And they've played 3 games. There are teams that have only played 2 games who have scored more than 19 goals. In fact, everybody has. So, sorry, I didn't mean to bring things back to how bad the Rock are playing. But okay, one other thing we wanted to get to is New England and Georgia. That was this afternoon. I saw bits of this, sort of on and off. Crowd was pretty low, and I mentioned this off the top. There's about 4,800 people at this game, down from about 9,000 last week. Like I said, this is Sunday afternoon, which are not known for great attendance in the NLL. The NFL playoffs are on. I don't follow the NFL at all, so I have no idea if the Atlanta Falcons are in the playoffs at all, so that may have had an impact or not.
They weren't. It was
they're not.
Carolina, which is close, but still it's not their home team that was in the game.
Okay, but
it's still playoff football.
It's exactly it's the playoffs, and so if your team's in it, then you're definitely watching. If your team's not in it, then if you're a big enough NFL fan, and there's a lot of them out there, you're probably watching anyway. So, yeah, the attendance today may or may not be a good indication of what's to come in Georgia. So hopefully it's kind of an anomaly, but we'll see.
Even to add to that, there's a lot of people, even if they're not an NFL fan or like an NHL fan, they watch the playoffs. Like, that's the only part of the season they watch. So it's just like, was it last year or the year before they had scheduled games on Super Bowl Sunday? Where it was like, really, why would you do that? You know when the Super Bowl is going to be. That's just asking for no attendance. Because, yeah, I'm a diehard Lacrosse fan, but I still know when the Super Bowl is, and, you know, there's a lot of people that, because it's Super Bowl Sunday, that's going to take precedence even over Lacrosse, which is, you know, in our opinion, the best sport, but not everybody's.
And I'm under the impression that the arena in Gwinnett, Atlanta is not heavily used, and they still stuck them with a Sunday afternoon time slot, which is just kills anybody. Nobody's ever had good attendance at a Sunday game, period. So it was very unfortunate. I want to review the rest of the home schedule for the Georgia there, and hopefully this is the only Sunday game they ever have to deal with ever, and just move on and get back to a regular evening event.
Yeah, New England was playing on Friday night at home, but I can't imagine travel was the problem because there shouldn't be an issue in getting from New England to Georgia in a day and playing a Friday night game in New England and a Saturday night game in Georgia. We have a back-to-back this year with Toronto and Saskatoon, which is probably 2 or 3 times as far away, between New England and Georgia. So while that may not be ideal, you would think that a Saturday night game in Georgia would be an awful lot better than a Sunday afternoon. So um, I guess we'll have to give them the benefit of the doubt and assume that this was the only time slot available, and hope, like you said, Tyler, that it doesn't happen again.
I have to wonder about some of these best time slots available because otherwise, why do we have Thursday games? I'm sorry. Friday night games, even in Colorado, the attendance drops to like half. I can't even imagine what it's going to be like for a Thursday night game. That's just, why would you do that? You're almost setting them up to fail. And it's like when we're trying to shake off this Bush League view that everyone has of us, you're just adding to it. It drives me nuts because this is part of one of the reasons I got rid of my season tickets, because last season I couldn't attend 5 of the games because of them being on Fridays. And this season it's like, wow, there was 5 games I couldn't attend again, and it's like I couldn't even give my tickets away. So it's frustrating to see the league doing this again this season.
As for the game itself, like I said, I saw parts of it and I missed some, but it did look like, just judging by the score or the box score, that it was a lot closer in the first half, back and forth, each team taking a 1-goal lead and giving up again. It sounds a lot like the couple of the other games we talked about this weekend. Then New England went on a 5-goal streak, thanks to 3 of those 5 by Sean Evans, and that was it. As the announcers said, that Georgia scored with a second left in the fourth quarter, and that broke Evan Kirk's streak of 0 goals allowed in the fourth quarter this season, which was pretty darn impressive. But that was not to continue. But Kirk is obviously having an outstanding season so far. I thought that the goalie for Georgia as well had a great game, Brody McDonald. Both of these guys are, we've seen sort of flashes of brilliance from them over the last couple of years, but they never really took that next step to being consistently great. And so far this year, they both played really, really well. So now that said, Evan Kirk did the same thing last year. He started off with 2 really great games, and I won't put it all on him. The team started off with 2 really great wins, and then didn't continue that at all for the rest of the season. So here's hoping the Black Wolves can continue, and the Swarm for that matter, can continue their success so far. I guess we will get to our predictions now, though I guess kind of want to skip this part. I was 2-4. You guys were both 3-3. So we're approaching 500. Overall in the season, I'm now 4-8. You guys are both 5-7. So hopefully the 3 of us can hit and exceed 500 at some point. But I guess for you guys, it could be next weekend, but it won't be for me for a couple of weeks. So last week, just quickly, we'll go over Rochester and Toronto. Melissa got that one right. Melissa also got Calgary, New England, and Toronto, Rochester. Tyler got the second Toronto-Rochester game, as well as Buffalo, Colorado, and New England this afternoon. I only got the second Toronto-Rochester game, and I picked Colorado over Buffalo. So next week, only a couple of games. You guys are both tied, and you both tied last week, so arbitrarily, I will choose Melissa to go first.
Okay. So, sorry, Graham, I gotta pick Buffalo. They're just, I expect Toronto to break out of this slump they're in soon, but I think the fact they had back-to-back games and back-to-back bad losses this week, I just don't think they're gonna quite be there next week. So, mentally and maybe even a little physically, so I gotta go with Buffalo for that one. And then for Colorado and Vancouver, If it was in Colorado, I think I would actually be picking Vancouver, but since it's in Vancouver, Colorado seems to often play pretty well there, and they don't have the altitude that I think is causing some second half slump. So we're going to go with Colorado. What about you, Tyler?
All right. I'm just trying to get ahead in the standings, so I'm picking opposite at times to the contrary choices. So I have Toronto beating Buffalo. I'm totally worried about the team that appears to be old, Toronto, having played back-to-back games and getting recovery, like getting their muscles and bodies ready for another game this weekend. But it's close by, an easy trip down to Buffalo, and they got a chance. I don't know. I think the Stealth had an awful outing and had rallied from it and got a big win on the road. So why can't Toronto have a couple of bad losses and have some kumbaya moment and get a win on the road in Buffalo? So I got to pick them. Second game, Colorado at Vancouver. Just like you said, Melissa, Colorado does great at Vancouver or Langley. With the BC players, get to have all their friends and family in the crowd and highly motivated. There's usually an attendance bump when Colorado comes in because of those people. It's noticeable. They have a good, essentially a cheering section on the road. But I think the Stealth saw what their potential is in against the Rush. I was really close to seeing in Edmonton, but in Saskatoon, and that team can show up and win the game. So I'm picking that team to show up and shut down the freight train that has been Colorado's first 3 games of the season. What are your picks here, Graham?
I struggled with actually I struggled with both of these for a little while. And being a Toronto fan, I really want to pick the Rock in this game, but just judging by the compete level from the first 3 games, I can't do it. I can see what you're saying, Tyler, and I can certainly see the team getting together and saying, okay, we just sucked in the first 3 games. There's no question. We need to get better. We need to get out there, and this is Buffalo, and we hate them, and they hate us, and so let's go out there and kick their butts. But Buffalo played a really good game against the Mammoth. Toronto did not play very well at all, so I'm going to have to go with Buffalo on this one and hope that I'm wrong. The other game, and it's funny because Melissa and I were talking before we started about this game, and I said and then you, Tyler, said the same thing later. If the Vancouver team that played week 1 shows up, Colorado wins. If the Vancouver team that showed up in week 2, or I think it was 2 and 3, shows up, then this is going to be a really good game. And I think week 1 was more the anomaly than week 2, so I'm going to go with the Stealth taking that one. And yeah, so I guess that's it for next week. Only a couple of games. Yeah, if there's anything else you guys wanted to talk about, then we can get there. Otherwise, I guess we're done.
I am good to go.
No, I'm just looking forward to a couple games this week. And then the week after, we got a Mammoth game on a Thursday.
Of course. Okay, so I guess that will do it for this episode. AddictedToLacrosse.com is where you want to go for all of our old shows. As I mentioned last week, we are now on iTunes, so go to iTunes, and if you just do a search for Addicted to Lacrosse, you will find us. You can then subscribe. You can leave a 5-star review. I suppose you could leave a different review if you really wanted to, but why would you? If you want to get a hold of us, Lax Podcast on Twitter, Lax Podcast on Facebook, feedback at addictedtolacrosse.com. There's all kinds of ways to do it. And that would be about it. This has been another episode of Addicted to Lacrosse. For Tyler and Melissa, I'm Graham. Thanks for watching and listening, and we'll see you next week.